Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah Ta'ala, the one who has no partner and no similar, the one who has no length and no width and no depth and no perimeter, the one who's not a volume and is not in a place. And how could he be in a place when he existed before time and space? He created everything except himself, including you and your actions. Nothing occurs except by his will, both good and bad, he destined to happen. He speaks without sound, letter, or language, not Arabic, Hebrew, nor Korean. He's not light, he's not a spirit, he has nothing in common with human beings. He's not in the direction of up, down, right, left, front, nor back. And whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah is different than that. And I bear witness that our noble, unrivaled master, Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is a slave of Allah, his final messenger, and the best of all of God's creations. May Allah unite us with him in paradise and grant us a drink from his basin. And may Allah increase us in patience, humility, knowledge, and comprehension, and help us to put our knowledge into practice and grant us all sincere intentions. Ameen. We're continuing in the book, the Hadrami Introduction, Al-Muqaddimah Al-Hadramiyya, by the Allama Bafadl. May Allah have mercy on him. Ameen. In the text, we've arrived at page 11. We've arrived at page 11, where it says the chapter of relieving oneself. Okay, this is a chapter in which we will talk about the etiquettes, the manners of relieving oneself. By relieving oneself, it means like urinating, defecating, going to the bathroom. What are the manners and etiquettes that pertain to this according to the Shafi'i madhab? The author, may Allah have mercy on him, says, it is recommended for one who relieves oneself. Now, when it says here, for one who relieves oneself, what it means is the person who wants to relieve himself, okay? The person who intends to relieve himself, the person who is about to relieve himself. What is recommended for this person? Notice that it says recommended. So the things that we're going to discuss in this chapter, these are not obligations. Okay, the things that we're going to discuss in this chapter, these are things that are considered good manners, good etiquette. These are things that are recommended. If something gets mentioned in here that is truly an obligation for you to do or an obligation for you to avoid doing, then I'll make a note of it. Otherwise, take everything in this chapter as something that is recommended. It says it is recommended for one who relieves oneself, whether urine or stool. My copy of the book has an S at the end of the word stool. That S should not be there. Should be whether urine or stool. Stool meaning feces, defecation. So the one who wants to pee or the one who wants to poop, what is recommended for him? It says to wear sandals. So one of the recommended matters for someone who intends to urinate or defecate, it's recommended for him to wear sandals, not to be in his bare feet. It says, and to cover the head. So it's also recommended that you should cover your head with something. There should be something on top of your head if you're going to go to the bathroom. Okay, and this doesn't matter if the place that you're going is like a regular bathroom or even if you're like out in the woods. You know, it's recommended for you to wear sandals and to cover your head. Okay? It says, and to prepare the stones. What it means when it says prepare the stones for cleansing, what he means here is that you want to make sure you have available stones to use for your istinja. Okay, now the chapter on istinja comes after this one. So we'll talk in more detail at that time. about how one makes istinja. But for now, know that when you clean yourself after going to the bathroom, this is called istinja. And istinja, there are two ways to do it. You could use water to clean yourself, but you also have the option of using stones, or something that's like a stone. So toilet paper is like a stone. And you'll see when we get to the istinja chapter why toilet paper is considered to be like a stone. But here, when he says to prepare the stones, what he means is if you're going to do istinja by the stone method, then you want to make sure you have stones on hand. You want to make sure you bring them if you need to. Okay, you want to prepare the stones for, it says cleansing, but it means istinja. Okay, and that, of course, is assuming that the form of istinja you intend to do is that you intend to use stones. Whereas if you intended to do istinja with water, then it would be recommended for you to prepare the water beforehand. Make sure you have a container of water that you bring with you so that water will be available for your istinja. So far, how many recommended things did we mention? We're on page 11. Page 11. How many recommended things are mentioned? He said to wear sandals, to cover the head, and to prepare what you need for istinja, whether it be stones or water. Then he says, it is recommended to present one's left foot when entering and one's right foot when exiting. What that means is the place where you're going to use the restroom. Okay? You enter into that place by stepping in with your left foot. And when you exit that place, you want to step out with the right foot. Okay, this is what's recommended. And when we say the place where you're going to go to the restroom, we mean the place where you're actually going to do the thing. Okay, so for example, at like an airport or a bus station or something, they often have large bathrooms where when you first walk into the bathroom, there might be a whole row of sinks. But then there's going to be some other part of the bathroom where there's a row of stalls. Okay, the place where you're going to go to the bathroom is inside the stall where the toilet is. So that's the place that you want to enter into with your left foot. It's the place where you're actually going to use the restroom, the stall. You enter into there with the left foot and you exit out of it with the right foot. Now, if you're at your home, and if you have the kind of bathroom like most Americans have, where the sink, toilet, and tub are all in one room, then in that case, you want to enter the room itself with your left foot and exit with the right foot. If, however, you're one of the fortunate ones where your toilet is actually in a separate room than the sink and the tub, then in that case, it would be entering the room where the toilet is. That would be where you want to enter with the left foot and exit with the right foot. This also applies to things that are not rooms. A porta potty, you want to enter with the left foot, exit with the right foot. Or even if you're out in the woods and you're just going to go pee behind a bush, once you've identified the place that you're going to go to the bathroom at, you step into that place with the left foot and you step out of that place with the right foot. Okay, this isn't about rooms per se. It's about just the place where you're going to release whatever it is that needs to be released from your body. When you enter into that place, the recommendation, the sunnah, is to enter with the left foot and exit with the right foot. And you should note that this is the opposite of what's recommended for a masjid. When you enter into a masjid, you want to enter with the right foot and exit with the left foot. Okay, that's because the left foot and in the left foot and the left hand, this is what's used for things that are foul or dirty. Okay, and since the place where you're going to go to the bathroom is a place that is about to become foul because of what you're going to do in it, and in many cases, you're entering into a place where someone has already done that in there before you, so it's already been made into a foul place. So you want to enter with the left foot. And you want to exit with the right foot first so that the right foot is in that place for as little time as possible. So you want the right foot to be the last foot to go in, and you want it to be the first foot to go out. Because bathrooms are not good places. Bathrooms are foul places where jinn and other wicked things like to congregate. The masjid, on the other hand, is a very good place. So you want to enter into it with the right foot, and you want to exit out of it with the left foot. This way your right foot is inside the masjid for as much time as possible. By the way, this rule about places where you go to the bathroom, that you enter with the left and exit with the right, this is true also for every place that's known to be a foul place. So if you go to a marketplace, like say, the flea market, or, any kind of like center where there's a whole bunch of different shops or a whole bunch of different stands of people buying and selling things, when you go into such a place, it's sunnah to enter in with the left foot and exit out with the right foot, because this is also among the foul places. Similarly, any place where it's known that people do haram in that place, if you need to go there, you enter with the left foot and you exit with the right foot. For example, like a pool hall, where people play pool. This is a place where everyone knows people gamble in this place, and often people drink liquor in this place. So if you need to enter into a place like that, you enter with the left foot and you exit with the right foot. MashaAllah. It says, and to do this also in the desert. When it says desert here, it doesn't just mean desert, like a place with sand and little rain. Desert just means the wilderness. If you're in a place where you're not inside of a building, that's basically what it means. Okay, so even if you were in the woods where there's lots of trees and bushes, you enter with your left foot to the place where you intend to relieve yourself, and you exit from that place with the right foot. Even if you were in the city, not in the woods, not in the meadow, not in the desert, not on the mountain, not in the iceberg or whatever, even if you're not in the wilderness, even if you're in the middle of a city, but you're currently not in a building, like say you're walking down an alley, and you need to relieve yourself in the alley. When you find the place where you're going to relieve yourself, say on the backside of a dumpster or something, you step into that place with your left foot, you step out of it with your right foot. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, I'm sorry, someone asked a question about entering a wudu area. I'm not certain what you mean by a wudu area. If this is a room for people to make wudu, like it has the little places for you to sit and a whole lot of different faucets there for you to wash your hands and put your foot under there, then no, you enter this place with your right foot. This is not a place that's gross. A wudu area is not some place you enter with the left foot. The bathroom, the place where people relieve themselves at, the place where people actually urinate and defecate, that's the place you enter with the left foot and you exit with the right foot. Making wudu is an act of worship. The place of wudu is going to be a place where there's barakah. Okay, so no, you want to enter that place with the right foot. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, continues. He says, one shouldn't carry. When he says shouldn't here, what he's indicating here, that this is something that's disliked, makruh. He didn't say you mustn't. He didn't say it's haram. He didn't say it's not allowed. He just says you shouldn't carry. So what he means here is that this thing we're about to mention is something that's makruh. Okay, it's makruh to carry an item containing remembrance of Allah. Okay, so when he says remembrance, what he means is mention. Okay, anything where the name of Allah is written on it, is mentioned on it, then it is disliked to carry that thing into a place where you or other people relieve themselves. Okay, it's because the name of Allah, the Exalted, as it says here, this is a name that's respectable, something that demands that you revere that name, and it's contrary to reverence to carry that name into a place where people relieve themselves. So it's disliked for you to do that. However, or not really, however, this rule also applies to every name which is a respectable name that we need to revere. So that includes all of the names of Allah, all of them. Even though some of the names of Allah can be applied to human beings, if it's one of the names of Allah, then it's disliked to carry it into a place where people relieve themselves. This applies also to the names of all of the angels. And this applies also to the names of all of the prophets. But in the case of the prophets and the angels, it only applies if there's some indication that this name is meant to refer to a prophet or an angel. Okay, so, if you're holding the report card of your son and your son's name is Muhammad, and you walk into the restroom holding this report card, we're not saying that that is something that's disliked. Because even though it says Muhammad on the report card, it's not in reference to Muhammad the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's in reference to Muhammad, your child. Okay, so in that case, it doesn't, it's not disliked. Similarly, if your son's name were Mikael, okay, it's not in reference to Mikael the angel, it's in reference to your son. So that would not be disliked, but it's disliked to carry a name into the place where people relieve themselves, if that name is one of the names of Allah, or if it's a name that refers to one of the prophets or one of the angels. MashaAllah. What do you do then if you have a name like this on you and you need to go to the bathroom? Like some people have begun wearing like necklaces and it has a little charm at the end of the necklace that says Allah. Or there are people who will have around their neck like a little copper plate that contains, names of Allah on it, for example. What do you do in this case if you need to go to the bathroom? Well, if you put it into a pocket where it's going to be well covered, I don't mean like a pocket that someone might see through, but if you put it in, like, say you're wearing jeans and you put it in your jeans pocket such that it will not be visible through the pocket, then this will be enough to take the dislikedness away. You need to remove that thing and put it in a pocket, or even tuck it, like say you're wearing 2 or 3 shirts. If you could tuck it down beneath the 2 or 3 shirts such that it's covered up, that would be enough. I also recommend, if you're one of these people who wears names of Allah or ayahs of Quran or something like that, if you wear these things for protection, I recommend you either purchase it already in a leather case, or that you yourself put it into a leather case, so that way you can wear it and it's always covered up. The fact that it's covered up is not going to change whatever blessings come from those ayahs or those names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It just protects you for when you go into a restroom. These rules I just mentioned about it being disliked, this applies to what? The names of Allah, the names of the prophets when it's referencing the prophets, and the names of the angels when it's referencing the angels. The rule is more strict when it comes to a mushaf, when it comes to actual ayahs of the Quran. Okay, ayahs of the Quran are haram to take into such a place unless you have an excuse. Okay, it's haram to bring a mushaf or ayahs of the Quran into such a place unless you have an excuse. An excuse would be like your house is burning down. You want to go save your mushaf from burning, but the only safe way for you to exit the house is to go through the bathroom and out the bathroom window. This is an excuse for you to carry it through the bathroom, for example. Or like, say you, I can't think of another example. But if there's an excuse, like if you have like a legitimate reason for carrying it in there, then it won't be disliked. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, says, one supports oneself on the left side. What does that mean? It means that while you're actually relieving yourself, meaning during the time that the urine is actually coming out or the feces is actually coming out, during that time, it is sunnah for you to lean your weight in such a way that the left side of your body is where your weight is leaning. So if you're squatting down, you would put your weight so that your left foot is carrying most of your weight. If you're sitting on like a chair, you lean so that the left side, the left butt cheek is carrying more of your weight. If you're standing up and relieving yourself standing up, you lean so that your left foot is supporting more of your weight rather than just half of your weight. You want to lean to the left side. And with the right side, with your right foot, you want to lift your heel in the air so that your right foot is up on the balls of the foot. And again, this would be true whether you are squatting or like sitting on a toilet or standing. All right, you want to put your weight to the left and lift your right foot up onto the ball of the foot. This is the recommended position for relieving oneself. It says, and distances and veils oneself. What does that mean? When it says distancing yourself, what he means here is that you want to, when you choose a place to relieve yourself at, you want to make sure it's far enough away from other people that no one can hear the sounds of you relieving yourself and no one can smell the smell of you relieving yourself. That's what's meant by distancing yourself away. And by veiling yourself, it doesn't mean you cover your face. It means you want to go to a place where other people cannot see you. Okay, so for example, going into a room, like a bathroom, and closing the door. Or like if you're out in the woods, finding a place that's like behind a bush or behind a rock or over a sand dune. You find a place where the other people cannot see you. All right, this is recommended when relieving oneself. You go far enough away from other people that they can't hear you or smell what's coming out, and also a place where they can't see you. Okay. An example of going behind something that blocks you from people's sight would be like if you went behind something. Excuse me for a second. Assalamu alaikum. An example of going to a place where people can't see you would be like if you went behind some kind of a barrier. Okay, and this barrier should be no shorter than 2/3 of a cubit. Remember, a cubit is the distance from the tip of the middle finger to the elbow of an average size adult man. That's 1 cubit. So 2/3 of a cubit is roughly the distance from like the elbow to the wrist of such a man. So you want your barrier to be no shorter than that. So it needs to be, 2/3 of a cubit or taller. And when you go behind it, you need to make sure that you are 3 cubits away or closer. Okay, that you're no more than 3 cubits away from this barrier, and the barrier itself is no less than 2/3 of a cubit tall, and that the barrier is wide enough that it blocks people from seeing your aura, your nakedness. This, of course, assumes that you're squatting down low to the ground such that a 2/3 of a cubit barrier would, in fact, block people from seeing that. Otherwise, you may need a slightly taller barrier. MashaAllah. If you have questions, drop them in the comment box. Inshallah, I'll respond if I see it. Otherwise, I'll respond at the end, inshallah ta'ala. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, continues. He says, one shouldn't urinate in stagnant water. So again, he's saying it is disliked for a person to urinate into still water, water that's stagnant, like say water that's in a bucket or just a puddle in the street or a small pond where the water isn't moving. It is disliked for you to urinate into such a thing, nor in small flowing water. Okay, so if you have water that's flowing, it's not stagnant, it's not still, it's flowing, but the total amount of water in that little flowing bit of water, it's not a large amount of water. Okay, it's not 2 qullahs of water, it's less than that. Okay, remember 2 qullahs of water, those of you who are here in chapter 1, 2 qullahs is the threshold to be considered a lot of water. Anything less than 2 qullahs is considered to be a small amount of water. 2 qullahs is roughly 51 gallons. So if the amount of water that's flowing if the total amount of water that's flowing is less than 51 gallons, then in that case, we say it's a small amount of flowing water, and it's disliked for a person to relieve himself in that water. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, says, nor into a hole. So it's also disliked if you're going to relieve yourself out in the wilderness, it's disliked for you to relieve yourself into a hole in the ground. By a hole in the ground, it means like these circular holes that you see in the ground, or sometimes they're not circular, but these things often have animals living in them. Like there'll be a little circular hole and there'll be like a snake that's in there, or something else that may be down living in that hole. It's disliked for you to relieve yourself into a hole like that. Not the least of which reason is that something might come out of that hole and bite you. Okay, so it's better for you to avoid relieving yourself into such a hole. It says here, or in the path of wind. What he means is it's disliked for you to relieve yourself into the wind. Okay, you don't want to relieve yourself in such a way that the wind is going to blow the filth that just came out of you back onto you. So if you're urinating, you don't urinate into the wind, because then the wind might blow it back onto your body. Okay? So how do I say this? If you're urinating, you don't want to face the wind because the wind may blow the urine onto your body. If you're defecating, you do want to face the wind because then the wind would actually blow the defecation away from your body. If the wind is strong enough, or if your feces is liquidy enough, it might make a difference. So if you're defecating, you want to face the wind to do that. If you're urinating, you want to not face the wind to do that. It says on a path. So it's also disliked to relieve yourself in a place where people walk. Okay, so if there's like a walkway and the people walk back and forth along that walkway, don't relieve yourself right there. Okay, similarly, if there's a place where people gather, they hang out there and talk, don't relieve yourself right there, because then you are annoying other people. You want to go to a place where people will not gather. Okay, so what that means then is in the summertime, don't go relieve yourself in the shade, because people may want to gather in the shade during the summer. And in the wintertime, don't go relieve yourself in the sun, because people may want to gather in the sun during the wintertime. Okay, relieve yourself in the place where the people will not be gathering. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, says, or beneath an edible fruit bearing tree. What he means here is that if there's a tree that bears the kind of fruit that people eat, like an apple tree or a peach tree or a cherry tree, okay, or even if it's not exactly fruit, if it's, a plant that produces cashews, okay, nuts, It's still producing something that humans eat. It's disliked for you to relieve yourself beneath such a tree. And it doesn't matter if the tree is currently in season, like if the fruit is ripening right now, or even if it's not in season, even if it's wintertime and there won't be ripe fruit for many months, it's still disliked to relieve yourself beneath a tree that actually produces fruit that people eat. Next, the author, may Allah have mercy on him, said, one shouldn't speak except for necessity. What that means is during the time when the filth is actually exiting your body, like while the urine is coming out or while the feces is coming out, it's disliked for you to speak at that time. Okay, a lot of Muslims, they've been told that it's bad manners to speak in the bathroom, and so they act like you're supposed to stay dead quiet from the moment you step in to the moment you step out. But it's actually only disliked for you to speak while you're actually urinating or defecating. You know, so if you sat down and the urine is finished, or there's like a gap in it where you urined and you feel there's more urine coming, but right now it's not coming out, it's not disliked to talk at those moments. It's disliked for you to talk while the filth is actually exiting. And it says, except for necessity. So if you have an actual need to talk while the filth is exiting, well, then it's not disliked if you have a need. For example, say you went behind a bush to go to the bathroom, and while you're there doing what you need to do, you see someone walking through the woods and he's about to, walk into a ditch that he didn't notice, or he's about to walk into a place and you see a snake there that he can't see. These would be reasons for you to speak out and warn the person. Even if the filth is currently coming out of your body, you have a need to speak up, so it will not be disliked in a situation like that. Okay, it won't be disliked in a situation like that. Something like responding to someone's salam is not considered a necessity. All right, so if you're behind a bush, urinating, and somebody says to you, Assalamu alaikum, you do not need to respond while you're urinating. This is not a necessity. In fact, it's better for you it would be disliked for you to respond in that case. Just stay quiet. And after you finish, you can catch up to him and respond if you choose to. But even if you don't catch up to him, you had an excuse for not responding. It's not going to be haram upon you that you didn't respond to the person if he slammed you while you were using the bathroom. What's next? It says one shouldn't cleanse with water in its place. So he said what this means is that it's disliked if you're going to do istinja using water, if you're going to clean yourself after relieving yourself using water, you should not do that in the same place where you relieved yourself. So again, imagine you're behind a bush and you urinated there. What will happen? The ground will become wet with urine. And so if you stay in the same spot and try to clean yourself with urine, there's a big risk that some water from your istinja will fall on the ground and it might cause a splash of, urine, like moisture of urine to splash back onto your body. So you want to actually get up, move to a different place and do your istinja in a different place, so that the water of istinja will not fall on the ground and potentially make a splash with the urine that's there. This, of course, is only if you're doing istinja with water. If you're using stones, then you can do it in the same place. He then says, the translator says, one should purify oneself from urine. His choice of the word purify, I think, is misleading. Because the author, may Allah have mercy on him, he's not saying here that you should make istinja, that you should purify yourself. What he's saying here is you should do istinza with a Z and a H. Istinza. Okay, istinza means not for you to clean yourself, but it means for you to make sure all of the urine has come out. Okay, you want to make sure all of the urine has come out. So, and this is especially an issue with men, okay, where you may pee and you may finish peeing, but there may actually be a few more drops of it still inside. And so what you should do, what's strongly recommended for you to do, is for you to do something to get those last few drops out, such as standing up and walking a few paces back and forth to get that last bit out. Or, you know, some people cough really hard. They do like, you know, and it'll get the last couple of drops out. Some people, they like stand up and then squat back down and stand up and squat back down. This kind of movement can get those last few drops out. If you're not careful about this, then what will happen? The last couple of drops will come out into your clothing or onto your body. And I remind you that the number one reason why Muslims get tortured in the grave is for this, because of urine getting onto their body or onto their clothes. And it's not because they don't do istinja properly. No, it's because they don't do istinza properly. Okay, they don't take the time to make sure the last couple of drops have come out. Instead, what do? They just, when it seems like the pee is finished, they just wash with the water, they put their clothes on, they walk out of the bathroom, and they get a couple drops of urine into their underwear. Okay, this is dangerous. It's very dangerous. Another method that some people use, a lot of men use, is they, I don't know how to describe this other than to say like milking it. You know, you kind of like put your thumb on top of the organ and your index finger at the bottom, and you sort of trace the two of them from the base out to the front to sort of like push the last couple of drops of urine out. This is another method that a lot of people do, and it works. But if you do this method, you need to be careful, because if you squeeze too hard, this can lead to incontinence later in life. It can lead to you when you're older to not be able to keep all the urine in, and you'll drip when you're older. So you don't want to squeeze hard when you're doing that. You want to do it lightly if you choose that particular method. So someone asked about whether istinza is also a term used for using douche. The Islamic laws and the scholars, to my knowledge, don't make reference to the douche products that we have nowadays. So when they say istinza, they mean making sure that whatever najis is inside of your body and about to come out, making sure it comes out so it doesn't end up in your clothes. And this is usually mentioned in reference to urine, because the Prophet ﷺ specifically said urine is the number one cause for Muslims to get tortured in their graves. Could it also apply to other types of filth? It could potentially, although I'm not sure how a woman would push out a couple more drops of blood if they're on their menses, or I don't know, push out a couple more drops of, that sort of pre-coital wetness. I'm not sure how a woman would do that. So I don't believe that istinza is the term that scholars use in reference to like menses and intercourse. Rather, after intercourse, a woman makes ghusl, And you know it's not required, nor is it recommended for you to do ghusl on the inside of your body, only what's visible from the outside. And ghusl is done with water. It's not done with any of these products. Okay, and, I don't know whatever these things are, the Massengill or whatever. You don't use those things for your ghusl. You just use water. MashaAllah. After that, the author, may Allah have mercy on him, mentioned one of the du'as that you make before you enter into the place where you're going to relieve yourself. He says one should say when entering, Bismillah, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. What's written in the book here is min al-khubthi with a sukoon on the ba, and linguistically this is valid. Okay, this word khubuth, it's valid in the Arabic language to say this word with a sukoon on the ba or with a dhamma on the ba, like where the kha has a dhamma and the ba also has a dhamma, khubuthi, or where the ba has a sukoon, khubthi. Both of these are correct linguistically. Okay, but the text of the hadith, or at least when I learned it, in Sahih al-Bukhari, it's read with a dhamma on the ba, min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. So I recommend, although both readings are technically correct, there's one which is narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I recommend you to put the dhamma there. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. It's also mentioned in some texts that at the beginning, instead of saying Bismillah, you say an entire Basmalah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. Which means, in the name of Allah, O Allah, I seek refuge. It says here of you. I personally would prefer to say in you, but you get the idea. I seek refuge of you from male and female jinn. This is the dua that you say when you're about to enter into the place where you're going to relieve yourself. And when you want to exit, or to be more precise, just after you exit, because you don't want to make this dua in the place where you relieve yourself, but just after exiting, you say the dua, غفرانك الحمد لله الذي أذهب عني الأذى وعافاني, which means your forgiveness. Praise is to Allah who has removed from me harm and cured me. Some people may have memorized a slightly different version of this dua mentioned by Imam al-Ghazali in several of his books, where it says, Alhamdulillah alladhi adhaba anni ma yu'dhini wa abqa alayya ma yanfa'uni. This one is also mentioned by al-Ghazali. If you want to say that one, it's fine, but this one is the one that's mentioned here is the one that we might say has been checked more times. MashaAllah, it's confirmed by the scholars is this version that's here. Not to take anything away from Imam al-Ghazali, I'm just saying this one here is perhaps vetted more than the one Imam al-Ghazali said, but they're both perfectly valid to say. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, then says, one shouldn't face the Qiblah or turn one's back to it. Okay, so when you're going to relieve yourself, it doesn't matter if you're urinating or defecating, you want to make sure that you're not facing the direction of the Qiblah, facing the Kaaba itself, okay? Nor are you turning your back to it. So you're not facing it exactly, nor are you facing away from it exactly when you go to the bathroom. If you do that, this is disliked. Okay, if you do that, if you face the Qiblah or turn one's back to it while using the restroom, that in and of itself is disliked. But in certain cases, it can be haram to do that. In certain cases, it can be haram to do that. What are those cases? It says here, this is prohibited if there is no veil between one and it. Okay, so one of the cases where it's actually haram for you to face the Qibla or turn your back to it would be the case where there's no barrier between you and the direction of the Qibla. Okay, there needs to be a barrier between you and the Qibla. Whether you're facing the Qibla or have your back to it, there should be a barrier between you and the Qibla. That will make it only disliked instead of being haram if the barrier is there. It says, or it is a distance of more than 3, he says arm's lengths, but what he means by that are cubits. Remember, a cubit is a distance from the tip of the middle finger to the elbow of an average sized adult man. He translates cubit as arm's length, but just know what he means here is cubit. Okay, so if there's no veil at all between you and the Kaaba, and you're facing the Kaaba or have your back to it, then that would be haram. Or if there is a veil, but it's more than 3 cubits away from you, yep, that would also be haram. Or there is a veil, but the veil is less than 2/3 of a cubit high. That would also make it haram. Okay, so the point that we want to make here is for you to face the Qibla or turn your back to the Qibla. This is something that is at best, the best situation for it is that it's disliked. Okay, and if there's no barrier between you and the Qibla, I mean a valid barrier, which is at least 2/3 of a cubit high and no more than 3 cubits away from you and wide enough that it blocks your aura, if those criteria are not all met, then it's not a valid veil. And in that case, it would be haram for you to do it. It says here, the exception is for the places prepared for this. So an exception to this whole rule, all of this stuff about facing the Qibla and turning your back to it, the exception is if you're in a place that was specifically made for people to relieve themselves in it, like a bathroom, like the bathroom in your house or the bathroom at your job or the bathroom at the bus station. Okay, any place that was prepared for people to relieve themselves in that place, then it's not haram, nor is it disliked for you to use, for you to relieve yourself in that place while facing the Qibla or having your back to it. Okay, the places that were made specifically for that purpose, you can use them in the way that they were designed. Even if the toilet is facing the Qibla or has its back to the Qibla, you can use it in the way that it was built. Excuse me. This stuff we just talked about pertains to what's haram. I told you at the start of the lesson, what we're going to talk about today deals with things that are recommended and disliked, not things that are obligatory or haram. But I told you, if we touch on something where it's actually obligatory to do or obligatory to avoid, I told you I would mention it. This is that part right here. Facing the Qibla or turning your back to the Qibla while relieving yourself. This is something that can be haram. And that would be the case where you're not in a place that's prepared for that purpose. And on top of that, there's no valid barrier between you and the Qibla. That would be the case where you've done something haram that therefore requires a tawbah. The next bits of the chapter, we're going back to talking about things that are manners. So these things are not obligatory, but rather these are the manners that all of us should observe. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, says, from its etiquette is, so my copy has the word that written here. I just kind of scratched it out because I don't think the word that is necessary. From its etiquette is not to face the sun nor the moon. Okay, so among the good manners when it comes to relieving yourself, in addition to making sure you're not facing the Kaaba nor turning your back to the Kaaba, you also want to make sure that you're not facing the sun, nor are you facing the moon. Manners, all right? It's not haram if you're facing the sun or facing the moon, but this is just manners. It says one shouldn't raise one's clothes until approaching the ground. What does that mean, approaching the ground? It means when you squat, you don't lift your clothes up until you're almost all the way squatted down. Okay, when you're approaching the ground, when you don't like lift up your thobe and then while the thobe is lifted up, take like 4 more paces forward to the place where you're gonna go and then squat down. No, you go to the place where you intend to relieve yourself, perhaps lifting your thobe up very slowly, like inch by inch, no higher than the knee, and then once you get to the place where you're actually going to squat, you lift it up slowly again as you squat, and you don't have it really lifted all the way to the place where you need to lift it until you're squatted completely down. All right, this is because you don't want to reveal yourself unnecessarily. That's what it means here when it says you shouldn't raise your clothes, talking about lifting up the thobe, until approaching the ground, meaning until as you're squatting, you're almost at the very bottom of your squat. That's what it's talking about. A lot of these rules, like you see how old this book is when you read these kind of things. This book is like 500 years old. People weren't wearing jeans and underwear at that time. The typical Muslim, or at least in several of the Muslim countries, would have probably been wearing an izar and a thobe. So like you can just lift them up and then you can use the restroom. It's not like now where like you may need to lift up a thobe but then pull down some pants and you're moving your clothes in multiple directions. So he says raise the clothes because in his time that was all you would need to do is lift up. But you get the point, the main idea here, which is that you don't, expose yourself early. Okay, you wait till like the last minute to expose yourself to use the restroom. It says one shouldn't urinate on solid surface. What he means here is on a hard surface, like something hard, like the sidewalk, pavement, boulders, things like that, things that are hard. You shouldn't urinate there. Why? Because it'll splash. It'll ricochet back at you. This is why I very strongly recommend that Muslim men not use urinals. Because if you pee at the urinal, what will happen? It'll bounce back. Little small droplets will bounce back on your clothes, and then you can't perform a valid salat. Okay, so you don't want to urinate onto something hard, like rock or porcelain. It says, and shouldn't look to the sky. So while you're urinating, you shouldn't be looking up while you're doing it. Or to one's private parts. You should also not be looking at your own privates while using the restroom. Or to what exits from one. So you should not look at what came out either. A lot of people, what do? After they have a bowel movement, they look at it. They go to see what it looks like. And, it's bad manners for you to look at it. Although there might be times when it makes sense. Sometimes if you're sick, for example, it might make sense for you to look at it because that can give you some indication of the nature of your sickness. But in general, the general rule is that it is poor manners to look at whatever came out from your body. It says one shouldn't play with one's hand. Okay, so while you're using the restroom, you should not be, fiddling with your hands, twiddling your thumbs or whatever else. You should not be doing that while the filth is exiting from your body. It says one should lower one's clothes before getting up. So again, when you're getting up, you lower the clothes, kind of the reverse of how you raise the clothes as you were approaching the place. So you know how I said you raise your clothes slowly, like inch by inch, as you descend, so that it's not completely lifted until you've reached like the bottom of your squat. Well, you do the same thing in reverse when you're getting up. You want to start lowering your clothes little bit by little bit, inch by inch, as you get up, so that your aura doesn't get exposed. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, says it is prohibited. So now we're back to talking about haram. Okay, we've gone back now to talking about the haram. He says, it is disliked, it is prohibited, he says, I apologize. The author, may Allah have mercy on him, said, it is prohibited to urinate in the masjid, even in a vessel. Okay, so it is haram, strictly haram, for one to relieve himself in a masjid, even if he can guarantee that none of the stuff coming out of him is going to touch the actual masjid itself. Even if he knows he's not going to contaminate the masjid in any way, it's still haram to relieve yourself in a masjid. This is why a masjid cannot have a bathroom in it. Okay, a lot of the buildings that we have in the US that we refer to as masjids, they're technically not masjids. Okay, they're technically musallas. And part of the evidence is that there are bathrooms in there. In some cases, you might have a building that includes bathrooms, but the masjid is only a portion of the building. Like it's the part of the building that doesn't have any bathrooms in it, nor do the floors above it and below it have bathrooms in that section. So everything above and below the masjid part is without a bathroom. In this case, it's possible, but it's haram to have a bathroom in a masjid. And even if the bathroom were there, it would be haram for you to use it if it's in the actual masjid itself, keeping in mind that the masjid is not the structure. Okay, it's possible for you to build walls around a wider space than the masjid itself, such that within the walls, you have an area which is the masjid, and you have an area which is the bathroom, and you have an area which is for wudu, and maybe you have an area which has classrooms or something. You know, the masjid is not necessarily the entire building. It says, and on a grave. It's also haram to urinate on a grave. Okay, when we say on a grave, we mean the grave of someone who has rights. Okay, so you cannot pee on the grave of a Muslim. You also cannot pee on the grave of a kafir if that kafir paid the jizya tax and therefore has rights under the Islamic law. You can't pee on that person's grave either. Meaning it would be haram if you were to do so. It is disliked to urinate near a grave. So it's haram to urinate on the grave, and it's disliked to urinate near a grave. Again, this is if the person in that grave has rights. As it is to urinate standing, except for an excuse. So it's also disliked to urinate while standing up. Okay, among the things that are disliked is to urinate while standing up, unless you have an excuse. Okay, an example of an excuse for urinating while standing up is like if you couldn't find any other place to urinate. Okay, so like the place that you found where you can do it, you need to stand up in order to urinate in that place. It's not possible for you to squat down. Or say you have, a problem in your legs and, you're not able to squat. That's an excuse. Or maybe there is a place to squat, but that place is like very filthy. Many of us have been in public bathrooms where it's completely filthy inside there. And, they couldn't pay you to sit down on that toilet seat. So you just decide to stand up. These are excuses, okay? These would be valid excuses for you to urinate standing. But in general, it's disliked to urinate while standing up. It says, and in the area where people converse. So again, if there's a gathering place where people will come together and talk, it's disliked for you to pick that place to be the place where you urine, because you're going to be annoying to people. Unless the people who gather in that spot to converse are gathering in that spot in order to do haram things. In that case, it's not disliked for you to urinate there. And lastly, the author, may Allah have mercy on him, says, if one sneezes, one praises Allah within one's heart. So if while you're relieving yourself, you sneeze, as we all know, when the Muslim sneezes, what does he say? He says, Alhamdulillah. But it's disliked for you to mention the name of Allah while you're relieving yourself. So what do you do in that case? You do it in your heart, not with your tongue. You don't say Alhamdulillah with your tongue. Instead, you think it in your heart. You think Alhamdulillah without actually saying it. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. That brings us to the end of this chapter. Next week, inshallah, we will do the chapter on cleaning oneself, the chapter about istinja. If you have questions, please go ahead and drop them in the box. I will respond if I'm able, inshallah ta'ala. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala to those who salamed me. All right. Well, I think I've responded to all the questions then. All right. Well, in that case, let's say La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Rabbi ighfir li wa lil mu'minina wal mu'minat. Rabbi ighfir li wa lil mu'minina wal mu'minat. Rabbi ighfir li wa lil mu'minina wal mu'minat. Barakallahu feekum. I'll see you next week, inshallah ta'ala, at the normal time. May Allah bless you until then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Someone asked, going back to the douche, it's not prohibited to use a douche unless it's going to be harmful in some kind of way. So it's not prohibited, but if you're going to use the douche, then just make sure it doesn't interfere with your ghusl. Okay, so once the menses is over, you want to wash the entire exterior of your body. The chapter on ghusl is coming up right after the istinja chapter. We'll talk about it, inshallah. But once you do the ghusl, if you do the douche afterwards, that's fine. Or if you do the douche beforehand and do the ghusl afterwards, that's fine. But you want to make sure that they don't like interfere with one another. Like whatever those products are in the douche, you don't want it to mix with the water of your ghusl and cause like a part of your body to be washed by something that's not water, but rather it's like a mixture of water and cleaning products. You just want to avoid that situation. Insha'Allah ta'ala. I hope that answers your question, sister. All right. Well, I'll see you next week, insha'Allah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.